Take it. Got it! Boston wins!
Two legends in basketball analysis with over 70 years combined experience. This is the Bob Ryan and Jeff Goodman podcast.
NBA, some college, a little bit of everything.
You know, what can I say? But it wasn't going to happen here.
Time for the Bob Ryan, Gary Tanguay podcast here on CLNS. Brought to you by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of CLNS Media Network. Pick more, pick less with Prize Picks. Okay, Bob, big news with the Celtics. And they totally believe in the theory, sell high. So while this team is at the pinnacle, Wyc Grousbeck and his father, I think people need to remember, Irv is a big player in this, have put their portion of the team on the block. Your thoughts about that?
Blindsided me. And of course, now we ran a feature story in the Boston Globe during the finals in which Wyc comes off as a thoroughly lovable owner who endless deep pockets, willing to spend what it takes, and told us that they are not into making money, they're into parades. And then this happens, they win the championship, and a couple of days, a week later, he's telling us he's going to sell, going to cash in. And it doesn't make him a hypocrite, but I'm a little disappointed, in that regard. Now but it makes business sense, obviously, for them, for he and his family. And but the one reason, or the reason that we see that we were given had to do with family issues and, quote, estate planning. Oh, well, of course, this is way over our heads at that level that none of us here have any comprehension of what it's like to live at that level and what the stakes are and all the ramifications, etc. I understand that. We've seen other sports teams have problems in this regard, okay, historically. So they don't want to be the latest victim, if you will. I totally understand that. I'm just surprised. I wasn't ready for this, but then you step back from a business sense. Well, why not? If you're ever going to do it, when you're going to cash in here, he has been a terrific owner and an ideal owner. And the first thing, now we're worried about who's going to replace him. Now Steve Yuka, who's equally laudable as an owner from a fan standpoint, is still here, and who knows, what's going to happen there in terms of whether he's going to buy more into it or whether it's going to happen. Anyway, we got to say Wyc has been a laudable owner, absolutely.
Oh, there's no doubt. I think that when you take a look at Warren Buffett at the age of 93, where 99% of his fortune is going to be in a charitable fund run by his kids, so the kids get 1%, and I'm sure they'll be fine. I think you look at Irv Grousbeck, and I was there at the beginning, and I remember how this whole purchase went down. Irv is a big part of this. He's 89 years old. They don't have heirs. The Krafts, I think the Patriots are going to be in the Kraft family for a long time.
Okay.
I think, Jonathan and then Danny, and they have sons and so forth. I think it's going to be handed down. The Grousbeck children, and there are two, I don't think they have an interest. They're not around the team. You would think it would be with dad, learning the ropes.
Oh, yeah,
that's not the case. So there's nobody to give it to. And when you get in a situation and you're 89 and you have that kind of money, there's a lot of ramifications that are above our head.
Oh, way over mine. I know that.
Yeah, mine too. So I don't want to put words in people's mouths. I don't know if Wyc wants to sell it. I think that the fact that he can be the man until he's 67 years old, I think is great for him. Because, look, Wyc has been mad at me. He's been mad at the pundits. I love him as an owner. They put their money, they spent money and they bled green. It's all you can want. So you're right that the article was a little, why do you do it then? But hey, look, maybe the guy wanted his own publicity. Maybe he wanted his time to shine. Good for him. He put his money where his mouth was.
Obviously,
look, Cuban did the same thing. He sold out to a Vegas conglomerate. And I think we're getting to the point, Bob, where these franchises are so expensive and the salaries are so expensive, a family can't own it.
Interesting. And one of the things here on the side here, is that they just handed out 2 whopper contracts
Right.
that the next guy's going to pay. The
Right.
next guy's going to pay him, not this guy, not this one.
Well, that was it. It was like, yeah, we're going to give you 600 million, but not our problem.
Yeah, no. So it's just interesting timing, but I just don't want anybody to get sour or in any way try to sully the record. The record is very good here, and
And ownership is
everybody
just
should have
changed.
owners.
I mean,
Everybody should have an owner like this, So I don't have any issue there. So that's the big story. But boy, I wasn't ready for that one.
I mean, can you think about it, Bob? I mean, billions. These teams are worth billions, $5-6 billion, which just blows my mind.
No, they were. It's a high level that none of us understand. So yeah, that's that one there. Yeah, we'll see how it
goes down, and hopefully now I think that Pags and the Abbey Group and so forth, the existing owners, Jimmy Pallotta, there's a lot of money there. Maybe they'll try to buy him out. I don't know if they're going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
I'm really concerned about who's coming in.
Well, you have to worry. The odds are they're not going to be anywhere near as good for the whole for all of everybody and the fans as this guy's been. So we congratulate him, and but that was a blockbuster. Okay.
Game Time is the authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. So it's really easy. Just download the Game Time app. Okay, now to me right now, the Red Sox are the ticket you want. So go to a Red Sox game. There's nothing better than going to Fenway Park or going to a baseball game, period. So what you do is you download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CLNS for $20 off of your first purchase. Again, redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Terms apply. Create an account and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Now let's get to the stuff we think we know something about. After we've had a chance to digest the season with the Celtics, who do you think right now is their biggest threat next year?
When I was going back a few weeks or a month or so, I definitely targeted the Knicks as the team, the next threat coming up, fully recognizing that Isaiah Hartenstein wasn't going to be there, but that they would figure something out in that regard. But we'll see. But then they trade for Mikal Bridges, even more strengthening, the thought process there. That the Knicks are a team of consequence, and they are going to be a team of consequence. But are they the threat? However, Philadelphia clearly has to be the one to think about right now, because not only did they sign Paul George, who gives them a star player on the wing to go with a center or whatever you want to call him, a 4.5, 5-, but a great player and a MVP level player, and one of my favorite new players in the league in the last several years, Maxey. As you probably know, I've been a charter member of the Tyrese Maxey fan club going back to Kentucky. So they got that, but they did take a little Embiid insurance and Andre Drummond, as long as they're asking too much from him, and Eric Gordon in the backcourt, and we signed Kelly Oubre, and they should be smiling. I think they're feeling pretty good about themselves right now. And that now our colleague Jeff Goodman, were he here, I'm going to speak on his behalf, will say maybe Paul George isn't temperamentally suited for Philadelphia microscope, as opposed to the Lakers and actually the Clippers being the little brother out in L.A. In terms of the fan interest. I don't know, but he can play. He's got credentials. He's going to that's an upgrade there. They lost Tobias Harris. They're not worried about that. They got Paul George, and so I think Philly right now in the East.
Well, if the big guy stays healthy, I mean that's one of the things with the Celtics. Excuse me, they had an amazing run, but they were fortunate. Butler was hurt. Embiid was hurt. The Bucks weren't healthy.
All right, Halliburton got hurt.
Yeah, right. Yes. Oh, the Pacers, right. He got hurt. So. And even against Dallas, the big guy, he wasn't 100%. If Embiid is healthy, that changes everything to me. And when
Yeah.
you know that, he can't. I mean, that's the deal.
And he's giving them problem. Well, of course, that was before Porzingis, but I'll never forget the game he played 2 years ago. Got 50, and it looked like it was a clinic. It was absolutely a clinic. No, I respect him. Keeping him on the court is always an issue, but boy, when he's there, he can do some good things. So that's that. Philly for sure. Now, meanwhile, other thing, Donovan Mitchell signed 3 years for 150, and he's locked up in Cleveland. They had to do it. Just the numbers blow your mind, but all these numbers blow our minds now.
I mean, hey, White got 115, 120.
Yeah, and that's a big story. LeBron, the whole
yeah. What about the LeBron? What about son and dad playing together?
LeBron coming back for 2 years at 50, 104, 50, 52, and he will be 42 years of age when those playoffs roll around, and in 2026, and so that'll be interesting. The whole LeBron Bronny thing, it was one of those abstract concepts that I don't know about you, but I kind of laughed at.
Right.
And it's here. And so what role and whether he'll even be on the regular roster, despite the fact that they've given him a guarantee, LeBron will have, we'll see. But it's here, and we'll see how it plays out. They're still not a threat, the Lakers. They need a lot more. They're not a threat. They're in the West. They're borderline playoff team. That's all, no more, no less. A couple of interesting moves, though, for people out there. Certainly Klay Thompson.
Right.
After leaving, in a, I won't say acrimonious, but not a completely commodious departure from the only team he's ever played for. Didn't end in a pleasant way, the way everybody would like to have done. But he's out of there, and he'll be well paid going to Dallas. Now, he wasn't the Klay Thompson of but he's still effective, and I think that's an important addition. As long as they don't overplay him, maybe give him a little Al Horford treatment. Fine. If they can do that, because the key is having him ready for April and May and June, and that's got to be the goal. But they are right away. They got an upgrade there, and they got another addition with. So that's very good. And the other intriguing one, at least maybe you can suggest something too, is Chris Paul, who is going to go to OKC, who needed some direction. And the idea is that he'll get homegrown the ball, and as long as he's willing to accept, if they cut his minutes and don't treat him like a Hall of Famer, but as a useful adjunct, and he's okay with that, that should work out pretty well. But he's 39. I mean, he can't have
amazing
that much left. He still can make an open shot, and he still knows how to play the game. And he might be it'd be a good guy for them to have on the floor in those final 5 minutes of games. And so I think that's an intriguing place for him.
Full circle for him.
Yeah.
Right.
Forgot.
Yeah, for Chris Paul. It's been that long.
Yeah, he's moved. Yeah, for a Hall of Famer, he's moved around a lot, but and he is a Hall of Famer. He's a first ballot.
Sure. Yeah. Oh boy, but he came on strong. I remember. Well, New Orleans had to move to OKC.
New Orleans.
They were off and running. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy app with over 5 million active members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. Get in on the daily action with your friends. Become part of the PrizePicks community today. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 players, their stat projections, and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You could turn $10 into $1,000. PrizePicks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Now, here's something that you can think about. What you can think about here with PrizePicks, here's an example of something you could. This is the whole idea behind the concept. Caitlin Clark for more than 3.5 3-pointers made, and Breanna Stewart for more than 23 points. See, it's that simple. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
Isaiah Hartenstein, though, they probably overpaid him, but I mean, but that's interesting because of what it meant to the Knicks and what it meant to them. That gives them a major physical presence up front. He can make it. He can step outside and shoot a little bit. He's a good rebounder. I certainly am learning all about him because I knew, who knew about him? He didn't play college here. He's from Germany, and
Right.
we didn't know anything about Isaiah Hartenstein, and that's a good pickup for them. So I think they're smiling fairly broadly right now about their chances of catching Dallas. But meanwhile, Dallas is on paper a better team than when we last saw them right away.
Yeah, they are. They are.
That's good. Any others catch your eye?
No, I mean,
there's
the
plenty of
Celtics.
stuff. That's a big one. Those are the big ones.
Yeah, those are the big ones. The one thing I have noticed is that the young guys all seem to be very happy with their teams. We don't have a lot of disgruntled superstars. Excuse me. We don't have LeBron wanting to move here and here. We don't have Durant wanting to move here and there. We have older guys who are going to places to be complementary players to take a last bite of the apple.
Oh.
That's what we have.
Kevin Love going back. Yeah. Kevin Love is going to be back for another year.
There you go. So the big stars, the true mainstays are with their teams, and they're not going anywhere. Everybody's happy, Bob.
Meanwhile, back at the ranch, we're going to have the entire team back.
I know.
Unless the loose ends aren't tied up with Sam Hauser yet. I'm not. Where does that stand?
I have not seen anything, but I can't imagine it's a problem.
If he does depart, and it could be that our number one draft pick is in fact a absolute replica of Sam Hauser.
Yeah, well, we know that Jeff Goodman loves the guy.
Yeah, and I'm impressed. I mean, I saw him in the Big East, up close and personal, and of course we got obviously a heavy endorsement from his original coach, Eric Henderson at South Dakota State, but I think that's a really fortunate draft pick at 30 on paper right now, but meanwhile everybody's about, they have 15 guys under contract, I believe, right now, including everybody that matters, and I just double check on exactly what Hauser's status, but everybody else is back.
I'm just saying, it says Hauser's in. I had missed it, but the Celtics are set to bring back triggering low money options, agreeing to a 1-year deal with Luke Cornett.
Yeah, got Luke Cornett
triggering a low money option with Sam Hauser, so that he's back.
Tillman back, and you know what? He's Al Horford insurance number one. And he's a little bit of 5 insurance too, but this guy's no stiff. This guy's a useful player, I think, and that's why when I said very categorically that not only were the best 1 to 5 and the best 1 to 8, but they were the best 1 to 10 in the league, right. and no one could match your roster. And I'll say it once again: everybody else would trade their entire roster for the Boston Celtics roster and hand it over to their coach, whoever their coach of choice, and say, "Don't drive this Ferrari off the road," and. Right. And this is what Joe Mazzulla has to do, is keep the Ferrari, on the road, and he was able to do that, and look what happened. So, but I'm curious already about next year, but let's enjoy this. I've already cautioned people, let these guys strut around for a month before you start worrying about number 19.
What do you think about the Olympics?
That obviously we've got a veteran-laden team, obviously, and the guys, and then. The big question, though, was whether Embiid would play, and if Philadelphia should play. And I know there are people out there who don't think he's wise to play, and Philadelphia should do everything they can to try to dissuade him from playing because of his historic fragility. But we need a big man. If you tell me who's the next best American-born big 5-man, it's Bam Adebayo, as far as I can tell. And after that, who I think wouldn't be out of place on this team? Brook Lopez at 36.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because he has, he's always, he's a 3-point shooter, but he's experienced. He's a good defender. I wouldn't mind him being backing up, Embiid on this team, but Bam's there, I believe. But we don't have that many American-born 5s or bigs of any consequence.
Well, the game doesn't want it. I mean, right. You even saw in college. We had a couple of big guys, but
one of them is a Canadian, and I wonder if Zach Edey what role, if any, they plan for him, because Canada's got some talent, and including a starting backcourt of Shea Gilgeous Alexander and Jamal Murray, assuming that will be there, and it should be their backcourt.
Right.
And that can match up with anybody in the world, starting with us. That backcourt, they can match up, no question. And they got some, they got some peripheral talent, Wiggins and Barrett, and I'm forgetting a few people. Kelly Olynyk should be on their team as a useful utility man. They've never meddled. And they've been kind of in a position to do so for a few Olympiads now. So maybe it's just a year to, I would think their goal, obviously you want to win, but you got to tell me their goal was to be on that podium and to get a medal finally. And now Germany is the champion of the FIBA, of the, World Championship team. And the Woods brothers are back, and Schroeder and Hartenstein, I assume, was going to be on that team. I don't know. Daniel Tice. So Germany, we still should win. I mean, come on. I'll be rather shocked if we don't win.
Right.
But so that's I'm looking for it. But I just, my own personal interest beyond that, as I just said, I'm curious about Canada. I'd like to see them medal. I'd like, for the good of Canadian basketball, I hope they can medal.
Give hockey a run for their money.
And
box lacrosse.
France. They were finalists last time. But Wembanyama, now they got. I don't know about the backcourt. Evan Fournier's still going to be on that team, shooting threes. Right. Nicholas Batum. I'm forgetting some people. But now I don't know whether these new young draft picks are good enough to be on their team. That the Ricasio and Alex Sarr. But anyway, we're still the favorites. We're the nominal favorite. Now they get rolling this weekend practicing, and I know that people in Philly are very antsy about the Embiid's presence. So we'll see.
Well, Bob, listen, enjoy the holiday break. I have to tell people that there is a 2-part special over the next couple of weeks on CLNS with Bob Ryan and Dan Shaughnessy together. I was happy to host it. And it's a career retrospective about the globe life of Bob Ryan and the same for Dan Shaughnessy. It was great. I mean, I had heard some of the stories, and I loved hearing them again, but then there's a whole slew of new ones. But it's really good. So you want to check it out at CLNS Media and CLNS.com and on social media. Bob, we're brought to you by Prize Picks. Sorry, long day as I lose my voice. The exclusive daily fantasy partner of CLNS Media Network. Pick more, pick less with Prize Picks. Bob, enjoy the holiday. Talk to you soon. This special edition of Bob Ryan and Gary Tanguay on CLNS is brought to you by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of CLNS Media Network. Pick more, pick less with Prize Picks. As you can see, we're joined by our friend Dan Shaughnessy, and this show is all about the careers of Bob Ryan and Dan Shaughnessy. I find these two gentlemen fascinating. I read them in the Boston Globe in the deep woods of Maine, which Bob now calls his vacation home, being one of those Massachusettsites that travels to Maine every summer. And to have known them and worked with them has been an honor. But I find their lives and their profession fascinating. So I want to talk to them about what they've accomplished in their careers, because it is immeasurable. Okay, guys, I want this just to be a conversation, free-flowing. And I think you guys will be okay talking about yourself. I think you'll be all right. Bob, I'm going to start with you. When did you start at the Boston Globe, and why did you want to be a sports writer?
I started on June 10th, 1968 as a summer intern. I had applied for it probably in late February. I don't know. I don't remember the genesis of that necessarily. But I was an unusual intern in that I was a graduate. Most interns are undergraduates. It's like after their junior year or sophomore year, not after their senior year. But anyway, I was taken in by the Globe. And on that day, there were 2 other fellow sports interns, one of whom was a guy named Peter Gammons from University of North Carolina and Groton School. And we kind of hit it off right away. And that was a few years ago. Yes, that's how I got started. And I was a summer intern. Then I was also in the Army Reserves. I enlisted in March, and I was going to have to go on active duty. So when the summer, when the actual internship was over in the late August, early September, I asked them if I could stick around until I went on active duty in late October and hang around and do whatever they wanted as an office boy or whatever. And they let me do that. And as such, I covered high school football on Saturdays and Sundays for the Globe for $25 a shot. And the public leagues played, schools played on Saturday, but in those days, there were two Catholic conferences, the Catholic Conference and Catholic Central. They played on Sunday. So every weekend in that fall, I was covering high school football.
Now, I first remember Dan Shaughnessy. We were looking at the Sunday Globe because in Maine, you didn't really read the Globe every day. It was always the Rumford Falls Times and the Lewiston Daily Sun. And then the Sunday Globe, that was a special event. And why I remember this, I don't know, but I was with my friend Rich Kimball, who you guys have been on the radio with. And I remember Richie said, "Who's this guy Shaughnessy?" Because Gammons had been doing the baseball thing. That sticks out in my mind. And you were new to us because up in Maine, we didn't, you had been in Baltimore. So, Dan, tell us about your journey to the Globe.
Well, I think they had a big thing for me was my dad subscribing to it when I was probably, 8th or 9th grade. And I think the Globe probably was trying to fan out in the mid-late 60s and have a wider circulation beyond Route 495. And Groton, we didn't have access to a lot. I mean, I delivered the Lowell Sun and all that. But I was very immersed in sports, not quite as much as young Bob Ryan probably, but a lot. And then when we started to get that Globe every day, boy, that was life-changing for me. Just, gobble it up. And when I was at Holy Cross, they had correspondence in the colleges that were not in Boston. So you had a kid at Providence or UMass or Dartmouth or Holy Cross to call in football stuff and occasionally write a byline story that they weren't staffing, because the Globe did a lot more colleges in those days. So my first byline is in 1973 or 4. And then I got to come in the summers and do Boston Neighborhood Basketball League, which they sponsored, keep the peace, keep kids off the streets. And then like Bob did high schools. It was up to $35 a day in 1975. And I did that with Kevin DuPont and Leslie Visser right after we graduated. We were divisions 2, 3, and 4. And then I had to go to Baltimore for 5 years to make my bones there and cover the Orioles, which was great. And then I came back full time in 81 and have been back ever since. You know what I've been believing? I think I've told you this over the years, that Baltimore Orioles experience, it affected you to where nothing's ever going to measure up to that again for you. That the guys you dealt with, the characters, the personalities, one of them you're very friendly with now, Jim Palmer, a.k.a. Cakes. You can tell people where that comes from. But, I just think it affected you so much. Nothing's ever measured up for you than that experience in terms of baseball experience as covering those Orioles teams. It was quite a way to start. And, all those Hall of Famers. And, of course, Earl Weaver, the manager, that's the guy you rely on every day. And we had the best guy in terms of taking care of the media. So it was a great way to break in. I was 23 years old, much like yourself. So it was a good way to start.
Can you elaborate on that Baltimore experience, Dan, in what Bob's talking about? I remember some of the players, the Renicke's, the Lowensteins, obviously the Jim Palmers and the Earl Weavers. But for those who don't know, just kind of give us the deal. They had been, they won the World Series in '66 when I was in junior high. And then in high school, they're in it 3 times, 69, 70, 71. They only won it once. Should have won all 3. 109, 108 win teams. But anyway, so they were it. And when I got there, it was Brooks Robinson's last year and Eddie Murray's rookie year. It was it's like Cousy and Havlicek. They had both for a brief time. They were both there the 1 year. They also had, Jim Palmer, of course, the manager. Cal Ripken Sr. was the third base coach. His son was playing high school soccer in Aberdeen. I wrote a story on young Cal. And and then Frank Robinson came up as a coach a year later after the Indians fired him. So we were surrounded by all these Hall of Famers and greatness. And then you had the core of young people. And I was lucky because Mark Belanger was from Pittsfield and Mike Flanagan was from Manchester, went to UMass with all my friends. And then Mike ends up winning the Cy Young Award my third year in the beat. And he was a Manchester guy. So
it was just all around me. I mean, legends, and then New England guys, and characters, and they would, at the last day of the season, even by 70 standards, it was very friendly and very media friendly, because this didn't happen in Boston. I had been around the Red Sox in the 70s working for Associated Press with Dave O'Hara, and I knew this was different. So the last day of the season in 77, they gave us a sheet of paper with every player's home phone number and address in case you wanted to talk to Jim Palmer during the off season.
Yeah, there's so many things about access are different, but that's the chart stopper right there.
How do you think, Bob? We just heard how Dan got his start and how those 5 years formed him. If you read your book Scribe, which, by the way, I want to say that the two best books you both have written, one is Scribe and the other is Senior Year, which I'll get to Dan in a moment. If you read the opening of Senior Year, if you don't cry, you're not a human being. I know everybody thinks it's about the curse of the Bambino and all that, but Senior Year for me is the book, as is Curse. So what made you, we just talked about Dan, how those 5 years in Baltimore kind of helped him, but what made you in your early years at the Globe?
I really think I was allowed to be myself. I entered the Globe at a point in time in which Tom Winship was the editor. Tom Winship was one of the great American editors of the 20th century, and he wanted to elevate the Globe at that point in time. It was on an upward swing, and in all phases. He was not particularly knowledgeable about sports, but he recognized sports importance in the Boston community and New England. And he wanted the Globe to have a superior sports staff. And so the resources were available to the sports editor to send people wherever we needed to go and things like that. But you had support. Also, the Globe was a writer's paper. Now, there's two kinds of publications in the English-speaking world that I know of: writers' papers, writers' publications, and editors' publications. And Sports Illustrated, for example, has historically been an editor's magazine. You have nothing but writers complaining about their copy being mangled when you get to know your friends from Sports Illustrated over the years. That's when it mattered. It's done now. You know what we know. I mean, it's on,
Sure.
on its legs. And they have internal strife that's just horrible. But anyway, and the Globe encouraged writers. They encouraged us to take some journalistic liberties, if you will. Peter Gammons and I were allowed to be ourselves. And I know a great copy editor named Art Keefe who kind of reined me in a little bit and when I got a little too crazy. And I'm very grateful for that. But so in terms of just the writing and being able to express myself and the fact that I was handed basketball, I was thrown into the deep end of the pool. The way I got it's a story that people probably today can't believe in the business. After I was a summer intern and I went in the Army, I came back in February of '68 to the Globe as an office boy, which meant I was, Monday through Friday, I was an office boy. But I did a few little writing things. And I was given a verbal promise that I would get an opening on the staff when it was available. So the month of March, April, May, June, July, September, and now we're in the middle of October. And Fran Rosa, the morning sports editor, comes up to me one day. I believe it was on a Wednesday of that week. No, it could have been a Tuesday because it's important in the story. And said, "You probably thought we forgot all about you, but you're going to be on the staff." Bob Sales, who was the guy who was covering the Celtics for several years, is leaving to go to news. Sales was a frustrated columnist. He wanted to be a columnist. We didn't have an opening. And he said, "To hell with this." And he went into news and he later became the sports editor of the Herald, by the way. Anyway, and by the way, he said, "You're covering the Celtics on Friday night, the opener, home opener."
What year was that and who was on the team?
1969. And so this is the first year post Bill Russell and Sam Jones. This is the new look Celtics after the championships. Hank Finkel, Henry Finkel. We didn't know he was Hank then. We knew him as Henry. And so I had not, obviously I had no exhibition games. I had not met the new coach, Tom Heinsohn. I'd never covered an NBA game in any fashion. But they knew that, I guess it was, the kid likes basketball. We'll see what he can do. It was kind of desperation. Now, actually, Peter Gammons and I split that job for about the first month at home. We didn't go on the road then at all. And and they gave it to me. And Peter wound up doing what he should have been doing ultimately, was baseball. But and not that he wasn't good at basketball, but his first love is baseball. So that's how I got started. And the people I dealt with made it possible for me to flourish. Tommy Heinsohn was very good with me. Now here he was, a rookie coach, had never coached a thing in his life. And, so to his advantage to have a good relation with the most important media representative. The Boston Globe was far and away the most important entity to cover the team. Local television had no role whatsoever in those days, and in terms of coverage. And we were the premier paper in town. And then for me, it was obviously important to get to know the coach and to learn the nuances of the NBA. My orientation had been college basketball. Yeah, I went to Celtic games when I was at BC. Yeah, I didn't go to Celtic games. It was the Boston Garden, for God's sake. They were the Celtics. But my heart and soul was in college. And the NBA is a different game. So I had to learn the nuances of the NBA. Well, I had some mentors named John Havlicek, Don Nelson, and Tom Satch Sanders, among others. That's on one side. And the other side of it, guys, I was the same age as the rookies. I was the same age as Don Chaney and JoJo White and Steve Kaburski, the young guys. And the next year, I was 1 year older than Dave Cowens. So socially, it was a good fit. Even the veterans weren't that much older than me, late 20s. So that's how I got started. And they treated me well and gave me access. I went to practice every day. I learned the plays in due time, knew all the plays, in a way that nobody does today because nobody gets to go to
it's all close
practice.
Yeah, because it's super top secret nuclear science that they're doing there on the floor. Game Time is the authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. So it's really easy. Just download the Game Time app. Okay, now to me right now, the Red Sox are the ticket you want. So go to a Red Sox game. There's nothing better than going to Fenway Park or going to a baseball game, period. So what you do is you download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CLNS for $20 off of your first purchase. Again, redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Terms apply. Create an account and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Danny, so before I want to leave your Baltimore story, can you just tell us what it was like to work with Earl Weaver? And for those of you who may not know who I'm talking about, you have to Google this guy.
They were very successful. I mean, he is one of the great winning percentages of all time. They won 90 just showing up, and he could do it with veterans or with young guys. He was a master, ahead of his time. He was doing the matchup numbers before other people, and it was very primitive. They kept index cards and things like that, but had all that, and he understood our job, and he would give you, if you hung around, he'd give you a different story. After everybody had left, he'd give you something else, and to the point when we were on the West Coast, I mean, we travel with them, as Bob knows. And, we run the planes and the buses and some charter, some commercial, but the bus left, an hour after the last pitch, whatever. And we had to get downstairs, get some quotes, go upstairs, finish up the story, and still make the bus. The bus waits for no man. That was the mantra, and they meant it. But they wanted you on there, so it wasn't a pain. And so Earl would give us the quotes before the game on getaway day on the West Coast. He'd say, well, if we win, I'll say this. If we lose, I'll say this. And whoever gets the winning hit, I'll say that's what we're paying him to do. And it was just very, very lax that way. And you travel with them. There was, I was 23. It was an eye opener. I was from Groton. I had never been on a plane. I had never done anything. And here I was traveling with the Orioles, seeing America, and seeing all these magic cathedrals that I saw in black and white TV, Tiger Stadium, and Cleveland and Chicago, Comiskey Park. It was a big thrill for me, and just they treated me very well. And as Bob said, I was younger than most of the players, but I was the same age as Eddie Murray, Scotty McGregor, Richie Dower, young guys that were on the team.
So how did you end up at the Globe? And was it a hard decision to leave Baltimore, even though this was your hometown paper?
Well, my papers kept going out of business. It's just a thing that it was a precursor of what happened to the whole industry. But I went from the Baltimore Evening Sun to the Washington Star to cover the same Oriole team. So it didn't change what I was doing. but it was a larger paper. It was in the nation's capital, going up against Tom Boswell of the Post. And I just thought it was, I knew the editor. It was Dave Smith, who had been Bob's first boss at the Globe. So yeah, that was, and then the Star went out of business in the summer of '81. And at that point, I had a lot of choices, because when you're 28, you've been doing Major League Ball for 5 years, and you're single. In those days, every newspaper wanted to hire you. So I had a lot of options, and Boston was home. And I had always wanted to work for the Globe. And much like with Bob, they didn't even have a beat or position. They just said, we'll take you because we know you got to decide. And I came back, and excuse me, within a year of coming back, young Bob Ryan went to television foolishly, and that opened up the Celtic beat. And they said, well, why don't you fill in for Bob, keep the chair warm. So I did that for 4 years, and then Bob came back. Peter Gammons left. I went back to baseball, and everybody was happy.
Yeah, I got to ask you because after all these years, I had you guys over to our house for dinner, and I remember giving you an encouraging pep talk to take this job. Did you need persuasion? What was do you remember the genesis of that? Were you hesitant? Were you not sure you wanted to do this?
Back to Boston? Yeah,
no, take the Celtics beat when I.
Oh, take the Celtics beat. Well, I just you were the problem. Following you was not. I just felt very intimidated by that. I had been out of touch with the NBA and with the Celtics. Obviously Larry Bird had come in. They won that championship in '81, but you were the commissioner of basketball at that point, and I felt ill-equipped for that, having just done 5 years of MLB, to go to the Celtics. But I grew up with it. That helped a lot, because when I was a child, they won the championship every year. It was like the forsythia blooming in the springtime. So I knew all that stuff, and that was helpful. And then there they all were in the flesh, Red Auerbach, and then you'd see Collins would come back, and John Havlicek, and yeah. But I think the problem of following you was the most daunting part of it for me.
Bob, did you know Dan prior to him coming here in '81? Were you familiar with him because of his prior stint with the Globe? And what was your impression of him as he was coming on board?
No, we didn't really, because I was on the baseball beat 1 year in '77, full time. And then I got off it after when Peter Gammons, who factored us in both our lives, came back from Sports Illustrated and took his job back, which was proper. I had no problem with that. Anyway, so no, we got to know each other. Maybe we did have some kind of. I don't remember, Dan, about having much of interaction when you were involved.
You were very helpful to young people, and the year you were on baseball, we interacted quite a bit because you'd come to Baltimore, and you didn't know that many people there, so we'd hang out a little bit. And we went to Hawaii together in 1977
the
winter baseball meetings.
Oh yes, okay, that's very good. Okay, I remember those meetings very well. That's when they made the big trade to get Jerry Remy.
Jerry Remy, exactly.
We were at the baseball meetings. Okay.
Any Mai Tais consumed at those baseball meetings?
I'm sure
we did. We went out once or twice. Yeah,
but good. I do remember distinctly, though, that I wanted Dan to take the job for me, and I said he was the logical person to me at the Globe at the time, and so I had him over to the house and gave him a pep talk. That's all I can tell you.
So you're there in '81. Now, to me, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but in the first time I remember seeing Bob Ryan on television, I don't know why I remember these little nuggets. And I've told Bob this before. First time I remember seeing Bob on television is he did a hit, Dan, for CBS, the NBA on CBS in Milwaukee, probably right outside of Goolsby's, right, Bob? He did a hit for CBS with the Bucks Celtics final with series in '74.
Yeah,
I believe that's what I remember. So, when you guys were becoming rock stars. I mean, you really were. I don't know, Bob. Maybe you could talk about this a little bit. When did you notice where, God? I mean, Will McDonough, you, Peter, then Dan came on board. You mentioned Leslie Visser. She went to TV. Yeah. When did you start to notice that you guys were becoming more than just Boston pundits?
Okay, first of all, in Boston, the pioneer was Bud Collins. Bud
Right,
Collins
right.
in tennis was the first writer, sports writer. And this is unarguable. He was the first sports writer to make a regular presence on television in Boston on Channel 2 at various tennis things. And then eventually, of course, Bud went into television full time and writing part time but then he's known to the world as a television writer, but he's one of the great sports writers of all time. Anyway, here's what's happening. First of all, ESPN came into being in 1979. WFAN came into being on radio, full-time talk radio for sports around the same time. And we were starting to get more and more local talk radio. At one point, way back, it was only the Voice of Sports on HDH, and then it was Sports Scope with Eli Schleifer and George Bent and Ted Sullivan on the end of the dial at 1600 UNR. Anyway, there's more of a need for expertise for people who know what they're talking about, and the source of expertise for these people to interview were writers. We're the ones that were traveling. We were the ones that were going around. The local TV people didn't do any of that nature at that time, and so and nationally it was the same thing. ESPN needed people for talking head shows, and writers were a natural source of it, and so that's how it all happened. And so the thing is, if you're any good, some people and talk radio, some people are naturally comfortable in front of the microphone or the television, and some aren't. Some very good writers weren't very good on television, and they're not that great at marshaling their thoughts quickly, or they're not just not comfortable. They don't feel that I don't belong doing this. Well, I call it the ham factor. If you have the ham factor, you're okay. I think I had the ham factor. And yeah, and that's it. I was, the ego thing. I liked it, and I was comfortable with it, and so for me that it worked. But I think the answer to your question is they needed people who knew what the hell they were talking about, who actually were doing stuff to shed light on the topics of the day, and that's how it all got started.
Danny, for you, when did you notice? Obviously, you were taking over for Bob Ryan, and then, we perceived you as the guy that replaced Gammons. I mean, whether that's accurate or not, how that lines up, but that's what I remember. How did you deal with that? And how do you think your life would have been different if you had stayed in Baltimore as opposed to Boston?
Oh, I mean, I love Baltimore. It was perfect for 5 years, and people were great, but I wasn't going to finish up there, live it out there. I mean, Boston was, I wanted a bigger market, bigger city. I wanted to be home. Right. So I turned down Chicago, and Chicago was the one that was closest, most tempting for me when I had my free agent period there. But Boston was home, and I just had so much reverence for the Globe. And part of it was like I was the guy who thought Gammons and Ryan were rock stars. So I'm coming up 7-8 years later, but they were so influential in everything I did, the way I covered the team, the way I wrote, try to write snappy leads, keeping data, having connections, Sunday notes columns. I took all that with me to Baltimore, Washington, and then brought it back with me, and then ended up replacing both guys, replacing Bob on the beat in 82 and replacing Peter on the beat in 86. And that was, in both cases, really hard because the readers were used to these guys who were the best there ever was at what they were doing. So that was a lot to do. I was somewhat uniquely equipped for it because I was from here and I knew a lot about both teams and I had been reading both guys for a long, long time. But it was you're never going to be them, and it was a lot. So it ended up really, really, really great. I've stayed in Boston, the whole time since coming back in 81, and turning down things that. Every time I stayed here, I ended up being really glad. Just there's no better place to do what we do. I mean, Bob's from Trenton; he didn't even grow up here, but I had the addition of growing up in central Massachusetts. And if you're a sports commentator, at the time we've lived in, the last 50 years, there is no better place than to do it here.
There's no doubt, because we're all doing this from our house, and over thousands of people are going to watch this podcast. Yeah, which is insane. Bob, go ahead.
Well, I've been saying now, it's one of my little mantras when I'm speaking or whatever, is that I'm glad I did it when I did it and where I did it. And I echo Dan on the fact that there was no better place. Dan, I don't know if I ever told you this, maybe, but by the way, after the end of my first year on the beat, I actually did interview with Bill Tanton at the Baltimore Sun, and they make a little pitch, and I decided that no, I thought Celtics, Bullets, I don't think so, and I mean it really, and I was I had no interest in leaving, but it was flattering. You're flattered, somebody wants you, how great. And the only other time I had any serious flirtation with anybody was after I'd done the baseball, or during that somewhere in that 77 era, LA Times, and the thing about it that put me off on them, is because LA was kind of enticing. That was that the way they covered the team was the wall to wall. I mean, spring training to the last day of the World Series, the 162, that it engulfs your life. Whereas I did this 130 games in 77, and I did playoffs, and I did spring training, and and 130 games. You had a life. You still had a chance for something of a life, which you would not have had if you're doing a wall-to-wall baseball from the beginning of February till October, and it wasn't for me. And not to mention it really was sideways. Anything from the Boston Globe is sideways in sports. Period. It's not. There's no improvement. It's only sideways.
There's no doubt. There is absolutely no doubt. It's a Hall of Fame roster. Bob, when did you feel that you were home here in Boston? Because I always forget you're from Jersey.
Well, having a girlfriend that you met the second or third day, we have this raging argument that goes back to 1964 that on campus at Boston College kind of got you into Boston too, with her father, who was a lifelong Bostonian, a Brookline resident, born and raised, and that, and the real thing that cemented me was the covering of high school football and having to drive to these new places. And the way I would find out where I was going because no GPS, nothing like that. So you call the police. I would call the police station, say, "Where's the football field? Where's the high school? Tell me where it is and how to get there." And that's how I would go to these towns. So I drove around covering high school football, and for about 5 years, I was covering the Celtics, right? And except I was also covering high school football in the fall at the same time, and nobody thought anything odd about that. But so I mean, I don't know. I got soaked up in the atmosphere, the history of Boston sports. It didn't take too long, but right away I had a local girlfriend, and that seemed kind of something. I think that had something to do with it.
It always comes down to money or love, Dan. Money or love. That's it. Okay, we're going to talk about the 80s, but before we get to that, you both have mentioned the high school sports scene. And in retrospect, I did the Exeter High School football Blue Hawks play-by-play, from the top of a van with a microphone and a headset and a roster,
Yeah.
And it was great. It's not that we wanted to do it for the rest of our lives. Now, there have been some people like Danny Ventura for the Boston Herald. God love him. He's great for the kids. He's great for the schools. The Globe had their people, but the name escapes me. But like Dan, the high school, it was fun. You didn't want to do it for the rest of your life, but it was so much fun and it was pure.
Absolutely. I think it's a great way to make your bones in the business, and it's fun to do it. When we did it for the Boston Globe in the 60s, 70s, 80s, it really meant something to those kids because, getting your name in the paper back then was a big deal. It's not anymore, but it was then. You'd go do a story on the high school quarterback and you changed the kid's life. So people cared about it. And the Globe's really been good at that. Go back to, Neil Singlays, Larry Ames, Bob Holmes, Craig Larson. These guys have just, Danny's been continuous at the Herald. And it's important. It's how you cultivate young leaders. And it's also enjoyable. It's great grassroots sports. It's the reason we got into it in the first place. Bob and I both played high school sports. And there's some of the best times of your life. And I always like going back to it. One of my daughters coaches high school now. And to the point, Gary, I wrote a book about it. When our last one was a senior, I knew I was going to miss this so much. I just had to, it's kind of an indulgent project. So I kind of had to get it all down. And I do miss it. So, yeah, I like revisiting that. I was just writing about the 50th anniversary of my BNBL days. It's going to be in the Globe next week. It's 50 years ago. Dave Smith called me up. Do you know anything about basketball? We got to cover this thing because we're sponsoring it. Can you do that? Yeah, I can do that. And
I went up on the PA mic at one summer there.
I mean, next thing, that was my start, Gary. They put me in the Globe fleet of Dodge Darts to drive all around the city and find these 2,400 kids playing basketball to calm things down during the busing crisis. And the bad part was you drive into Charlestown or Mattapan or whatever, and everybody hated the Globe because they had come out in favor of busing for desegregation with moving kids across town. Nobody wanted it, and then the Globe cars had a big stencil on the side of the door, Boston Globe. So I'd come tooling in from Groton, like, get out of here. So even then, I was scorned.
We all have our memories of stuff. I remember covering the North Shore Jamboree before one season, and up in Fraser Field and Lynn. And the two things I remember are A, when I came out of the game, somebody had broken off my car aerial, and B, in the payphone dictating the story back to the Globe, people banging on the side, saying, "Are you going to be through? When are you going to get out of there?" And you have to laugh. It was fun. But covering football was the big one because because you kept your own stats. You had a clipboard and you roamed up and down the sideline. Every play you recorded the guy's number and how many yards, and that's how you kept it. And you knelt down in the snow or the mud, if you had to, and did it. And that you just did. But I remember one day I'm covering, they sent me to Swampscott when they still were on their big winning streak. Some people here will know about this. Ask Dad or Uncle Edward about Swampscott, by the way, if you're
Lynchy knows about it.
The Stan Bondalevich era. Okay. So I'm up there and they're playing St. John's, and St. John's beats them. And I called the Globe right away. It was Saturday afternoon, of course. It was during the World Series. 70, I believe it was. I called the Globe right away. I said, "Hey, Swampscott lost." And damn if they don't put the story on page 1 of the Globe, A1, C1. I mean, so, that stuff like that. I remember it very well. And I remember it, but the first game I ever covered was at Brockton before they built Marciano Stadium. We're talking about their original field. And the first game ever that I covered was Zavarian at Brockton. And Zavarian was moving up from Class C or whatever to B or something like the old class. And this is their first game against an A team, and Brockton was mighty, and they beat them. And they beat them, and I got to cover that game. So these memories are stuck in my mind. I did basketball. I remember Ronnie Lee. I'll tell you right categorically right now, is still the best high school basketball athlete that I've ever seen. Player. He was a man's body at age 15, and he's still. The best, in my opinion, still my favorite, best high school player that I'm not saying he is, but in my experience, never forget seeing Ronnie Lee for Lexington High School. And Ronnie Perry as a freshman, best 14-year-old I ever saw was Ronnie Perry Jr. I can tell you that right now. And I go on and on and on. Dan can tell I go on and on with his too. But these are an important part of our foundation as sports writers that I'm sure people don't do it anymore the way we did it. It was a rite of passage. It was a necessary rite of passage. Preseason previews. Oh my God, calling all those coaches up in all those leagues and doing those previews. And I mean, that consumed us in late August and early September. But you did it, and you're much better off for it. Now, one drawback, which was, and I bet Dan will not disagree with this one. Of all the people you deal with, high school parents still can be the biggest problem. High school parents are utterly unrealistic. And, if you write a nice feature about a team and mention a kid, and then, you think you've done something nice, and then somebody calls up and says, "What about my kid? He works hard too." Oh, God. You can't win with the high school parents.
Well, my story there is when I was doing the high school football games in Exeter. And again, I'm on top of the van with a mic. I'm the whole shebang. I'm the engineer. I'm the statistician. I'm everything. And we did one game up in Rochester. There were no lines on the field. And it rained the night before.
Figure it out.
No lines on the field. And it reminded me of the Kurt Gowdy story where he did a game when he started his career. There were no numbers. One of the teams, there were no numbers, so he made up the names. So, when you're doing so, and I'm the stat guy too, so I used to like make up the stats, hey, he's got 100, but if you got a kid's name wrong, now, I'll never forget this. There was a young player, and I always pronounced, his name was Derek DeRouche, and I pronounced his name DeRouche because in Mexico and Rumford, Maine, the DeRouche family pronounced their names DeRouche, Derouche. Bummy DeRouche was my summer basketball coach. I had a crush on his sister, all that small town stuff, right? It was DeRouche. Well, no one, so I just went Derek DeRouche with the touchdown. They pronounced it DeRouche.
Oh.
I should have checked with the coach, but I thought it was a no-brainer. You would have thought they were ready to throw me in the clink. But anyways, I can relate.
One more thing.
Go ahead, Bob.
Baseball. 1971, I cover baseball, high school baseball. I picked the all-scholastic team by myself. And that's a responsibility. I'm 25 years old, and I'm picking this team. Two of my pitchers made the big leagues, by the way, and Mark Bomback and the other ones come to mind. But but here's how I found out. This guy was intimidated. After it was published, I found out that as a result of the all-scholastic, one of the kids got a college scholarship offer that would not have come if I had not given him the prominence of the Boston Globe all-scholastic. That was kind of sobering. But my first baseman, the name might mean something to say, but Glenn Tufts.
Glenn Tufts, yeah.
Slugging first baseman. And I remember Jerry Mondato and Bunky Smith. There's a name you can't forget.
Oh, wow.
And Paul Flanagan. I mean, they're coming back to me now. And my other pitcher, Ace Adams, who won out pitching batting practice for the Red Sox for how many years? I start in University of Michigan. Ace Adams and Mark Bomback was my pitcher.
Well, I wish you'd been doing it in 2005 because Sam Shaughnessy was a junior at Newton North, and he made the Herald all scholastic team, but did not make the Globe team.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
That is hilarious.
Anyway, so baseball too. I traveled around to these games and So
Danny, I have to ask you, Bob. I'm going to ask you, how old are you?
78.
I'm 70.
Dan, are you amazed at Mr. Ryan's recall?
No, I see it every week. I've lived this my whole life. So, I mean, it was amazing when I was 20, but I'm used to it now.
It's amazing. He's a computer. I mean, an absolute computer. I mean, it's fascinating. Okay. So now we're going to move on. Unless you guys want to mention something for the 70s, I want to get to the 80s because I think that's a big decade for both of you guys. The 80s, money, cocaine, not that anybody did it, parties, BMWs, the Celtics, Larry Bird, the Red Sox, 86, the Patriots in 86. Danny, I'll start with you and just the beginning of the 80s because that's what I remember with this explosion from the Globe as being the pinnacle for sports media.
It's all true. I mean, there was the most flush the newspapers were. The teams were still good because we had a big gap, as you remember, after 86. Nobody won around here for a while.
Right.
But you had the Patriot run to the Super Bowl, Red Sox run to the 7th game of the World Series. And in the Globes, in the Celtics, obviously winning 3 championships in the decade. The Bruins were in cups. So it was all happening in the 80s. And for the Boston Globe, it was all happening. That's the height of, the deepest depth that the staff had. That's when we had people like Jackie McMullen and Ian Thompson being interns and trying to work their way up to the staff. Leslie Visser's still in the staff. Willie's at the top of his game. Bud's at the top of his game. Ryan and Gammons were at the top of the game before Peter left. I had come in. Kevin Dupont comes in. We had Ron Borges. Of course, Montville, Ray Fitzgerald, we had just lost. That was it. Jack Craig invented television sports coverage. I mean, I'm going to leave somebody out, of course, but, Fran Rosa, they're all in the Hall of Fame in their respective sports. And there was the golden 80s. And for newspapering, for the Boston Globe, that's where the overlap, where the young people are coming in and the old people are still still there. And in my view, it was the greatest sports section of all time.
There's no doubt in my mind. Bob, I just have to interject. I knew I had made it when Jack Craig ripped me. I said it was about to trade Bork or not trade Bork, and I was working at EEI on the weekends, and I don't even remember if I said trade him or don't trade him, but Jack Craig said, this Gary Tanguay doesn't know what he's talking about. And I was like, yes.
Now,
Bob,
I got to admit, I had a converse feeling when Jim Baker ripped me. When I was at Channel 5. The Herald's guy, Jim Baker, who I had known.
Something else.
What
about
Dan,
you in the 80s, Bob?
The Globe was at zenith in every way, and the times were different, and the newspapers reigned supreme, and the Globe was flush. And I remember I during that decade, I went from covering the Celtics, to leaving, as you know, for 19 months, although I was writing a column for the Globe for 17 of those 19, which is why I consider myself to be continuous at the Globe since 1968 and until 2012. And then I went. When I came back, it wasn't as the beat man. I came back in '84 and was a general NBA at large and general feature writer until I took the torch from Dan in '86 when Peter Gammons once again features in our life. In January of '86, Peter Gammons decided he's going back to Sports Illustrated for a second time and vacating baseball. Dan was covering the Celtics. But, his passion and first love has always been baseball. And, of course, he raised his hand for that naturally, and he did it properly and got that job. And guess who got the job reluctantly, as it turned out? By the way, I wasn't sure I wanted to go back to cover the beat. But after we interviewed a couple of people and they didn't give the job, I don't know how. I said, okay, I'll take it. And it was the happiest decision because it was the 85-86 team. And when he handed the team over to me in February, as well as they had been playing before, they started playing even better. The last 2.5 months, they were the most invincible team I've ever seen in the NBA.
They were happy so that was part of it.
And now gave birth to Dan's great book. I wish it would have lasted forever. That was a quote from Bill Walton.
Scoop Shaughnessy, as Larry called them.
I did get to finish the job. I'm happy to say. So I'm kind of, and to see him get it all done. Anyway, and then I covered the team for 2.5 years until I had a book out with Larry Bird, and they didn't want me to have the book while the book was out, conflict of interest, which is a lot of nonsense. But anyway, and I went back, and in '89, we both became columnists. '89 is a big upheaval in which the National came into being, and our sports editor left to go. Lee Montville left the paper to go to Sports Illustrated, and in order to replace him, they wound up hiring both of us to replace Lee Montville. So Montville can say, took 2 people to replace me. He can say that.
I just listed all those. So if you're
was my decade.
I have to do this. I just listed all those people. I didn't even say Montville. The 80s.
I think
he's the columnist of record in the 80s. He's the guy.
He is.
That's how good we were.
And unique. I always say, I don't know what Lee Montville does, but he does it better than anybody. And because
he's writing, he's Shakespeare. The guy's Shakespeare.
Sideways way. So anyway, the Globe was awesome. I keep pointing out to people that at one point there were the 4 people most associated with the beats at one point in time. Will in football, Randy Rosa was the hockey guy then. Peter was the baseball guy. I was the basketball guy, all on the respective writers' wings of the Hall of Fame of those sports. And of course, Dan joins us. He's in baseball.
Well, the baseball beat alone, Gammons, Whiteside, myself, and Cafardo were all there in the 80s.
That's right. Yeah.
All 4 of those guys were in the Hall of Fame. I mean, it was like that's no paper's ever going to happen.
We had the deepest bench. We get in the playoffs and in basketball. We got people like Mike Madden and Leslie writing sidebar. Ian Thompson writing sidebars. That is in the world of sports journalism. It's almost unthinkable today. There's nothing remotely comparable. Never will be, and all that will never happen again. Obviously, newspapers.
It's just not the same.
But we do say so ourselves.
Right. Well, it's just going to happen differently. But like Ian Thompson, a Renaissance man, wasn't he working for a paper in Paris?
Or something? He went to the International Herald Tribune after he left the Globe. Yeah. He worked for the International Herald Tribune for several years in Paris. Right. That's true.
So it's like you have all of these people like Bud Bud Collins, didn't Bud also did he do theater reviews or something? Or
No, you know what he did? He did a column on Sundays called Bud Collins Anywhere. It was a travel column. It was about his travels all over the world. And he wrote into Sunday non-sports, he wrote.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you were it was a very eclectic group, but a very deep group. And I'm glad you mentioned Nick, because I do want to, what a sweet man. I mean, I remember meeting Nick, and just that was a damn shame. Just a damn shame. So I'll ask you guys to each tell a story about Nick Cafardo. Dan, we'll start with you.
The World Series when they won in 18, you might remember that the game 3 or 4. It was the 18 inning thing, and I remember that was a long. We were at the park forever, and they just kept, and we're going from like inning 16 to 17. Dodgers don't score again. Here we go, and I'm a little exasperated. And Nick just turns to all of us and goes, "Isn't this the greatest?"
I know.
And that was Nick. And he was gone less than 6 months later. It was
so funny. He had such
worst days of all time.
Oh, it's terrible. He was so funny. He had such a great sense of humor. And the way he would get stories. I mean, Bob, I think you told me the story, or one of you guys told me. Didn't Will McDonough say, "Hey, this guy at the Ledger's killing us. You better hire him"?
That could be.
Right.
Could be.
You got to
No,
remember,
he loved this.
Bob.
You know what people forget, at the time? Okay, we think about it for baseball. We should. He was a terrific football writer.
Very good.
And very good. I mean, and he had Nick was a master of contacts. Nick's his personality, his enthusiasm, his knowledge. He cultivated great sources. He had great sources in football.
Terry Glenn.
Yeah.
Terry Glenn told him the whole story. I mean, he was on top of the Terry Glenn story. Like, it was incredible. He would kill him with kindness. So we remember Nick Cafardo fondly. So I kind of veered off there a little bit. When you were working for the Globe, Dan, when did you feel or notice that you had power? Because I saw it. The Globe guys were the Beatles. And when I say guys, I mean guys and women. You guys were the Beatles. When did you notice that?
Well, I mean, again, that people read newspapers then, and people read sports. In our town, they paid attention to what we were saying. I saw power. I've written this a million times. When I came back and I would hang around Bob Ryan to learn how to cover the NBA, and Bob would sit down by the visitors bench, and we're sitting down by the Bullets bench, and they had Ruland and Mahorn and McFilthy McNasty, and Bob had given some paragraphs to this in his Sunday column about how dirty they were. And they called a ticky-tack foul, I think, on Mahorn in the first half. And Gene Shue, the coach of the team, wheeled around and started blaming him. They said, "Bob Ryan, that foul is your fault. That's your fault." Because even the referees were reading it. So it was clear right then. But I know that when I covered the Celtics, I mean, like, you could tell when guys would get pissed off. They were reading the paper. I said that Quinn Buckner was near the end. He was a wonderful guy, but his skills weren't great by the end. He was a little out of shape, and he was hanging on. And I wrote it was a throwaway sentence late in this game story that Buckner played like a man with no clue. And oh man, Max still calls him Inspector Clouseau because of that. They were practice the next day, and they're like, "A man with no clue."
Oh, God.
And like, they paid attention to what was written. The players did. And Larry did not like the way I encapsulated there was a fight when he was, one of the bad ones, when he was held back, and Barkley was holding on to him from behind, and he took a couple of shots, and he didn't like the way that was characterized. And he told me in no uncertain terms and how much it matters what we write. And that's people's takeaway is going to be from that. So again, that's power that they don't have today. And it's a small little thing, but when you're around it every day, you take that seriously, because what we wrote matters.
I know that during that period of time with the Lakers from 84 to 87, and the LA guys would come in, and some of them were really amazed at the reaction that we got in the Garden. People knew who we were because in L.A. The company town is Hollywood. It's not sports, even as big as sports are. At least it was the way. I don't know how much things may or may not have changed, but that was definitely the way it was in the 80s. That they felt anonymous, and we were obviously far from anonymous at the Boston Garden. And
here's how non-anonymous we were in the 80s. Well, this carries into the 90s, but that Super Bowl in New Orleans, the Parcells one, when he left the team, we had a team dinner in the French Quarter on Saturday night before the game. They're playing the Packers the next day. Everybody's mad at the Globe because Willie said Parcells was leaving after the game.
Right.
Willie was right, of course, but it ruined our week, for all the fans, who were there. And we're walking to the French Quarter with Bill Weld. We had a couple. What a surprise! And going to dinner.
the governor, Bill Weld.
Yeah, and it's the
okay.
French
So
Quarter.
just so people understand who are listening to this, the Boston Globe Sports Department is having drinks with the freaking governor. That's the magnitude of what they did.
And it's the night before the Super Bowl because Curtis Wilkie had a place in the French Quarter, our big time national reporter. And we were walking to dinner, like 18 of us, from Curtis Wilkie's apartment to the restaurant in the French Quarter. Night before the Super Bowl, French Quarter. Drunken Patriot fans, drunken French Quarter people, Mardi Gras people, whatever. And a clown is coming toward our group. He was in full clown regalia outfit, which he doesn't even stand out that much in this crowd. The clown was he mixed in with everybody. And as the clown passes, the clown goes, "Shaughnessy, you suck," And I mean, I said, "Yeah, well, you're a clown." It was just, but where else is that going to happen where you're a lowly sports writer and the friggin' clown in New Orleans knows who you are and how much you suck?
That's like phenomenal. Bob, an example of you when you realized, the power, and was it ever intoxicating?
I just, people, I can't specifically pinpoint anything. It's just that I was getting reaction.
Gene Shue yelling at you during the game.
Gene Shue, of course. The Gene Shue story is hilarious. Earl Strom, Richie Powers, who actually was very friendly with the great referee of the time, Richie Powers. And here's one funny story. This is not and he knew who I'm sitting there down near the visiting bench. It just so happened the same place where I was when Dan told us the story about Gene Shue. Okay, there's a foul called by Richie Powers and on the Celtics, and then there's a timeout before the free throw. Okay, they call timeout without, and so he comes back. They come back on the court, and the guy, the other team goes to the line, and I thought it was going to be an out of bounds, and I went to nobody in particular. He wasn't shooting. And Richie comes over and says, "Shut your mouth, I'll get you thrown out of here." And so I don't know what that means, but no, I'm kidding. But that was in the days when the building wasn't full. We're talking, in the early 70s.
And you're on the sideline. You're by the official.
Yeah, 8 or 10,000 people. You could hear voices could carry. Sometimes you could hear Johnny Most from down on the floor. You could hear him from upstairs.
As Gary referenced, we're sitting at courtside, the seats that are now sold for billions, but we're sitting next to the bench at the table on the court. And so there was access. And Dennis Johnson, one time, Larry had just done something great. And Bob was, pontificating, raising his voice, arms flapping, the usual, and making a deal about Larry's greatness. And DJ was coming up the court, and he didn't like to rush it up the court. He was a pounder. So he's walking it up over half court. He dribbles over toward us and says, "Keep it down, Bob. We got a game going on out here." So, that's power.
That's a story. Okay, with that, do you have any regrets? Bob, I'll start with you. Do you regret writing something?
I think I may have. I have to go double check this, but I got intimidated into suggesting that in the aftermath of Reggie Lewis, the Reggie Lewis death, particularly, that the Celtics be given a draft choice. That or the bias one. I think which was stupid. And other than that, I don't really regret. You can be wrong, and one of the things about being wrong is I love the apology columns. They're very easy to write and fun. when you make, when you can be self-deprecating and make fun of yourself. You could. I remember one I wrote about Ray Williams. Ray Williams came because we wanted no part of Ray Williams. We thought
Right.
it was, and he actually played pretty well that year for them. And I wrote a column about how, totally inventing a scenario where I was, somebody came in and stole my typewriter and wrote a nasty column about Ray Williams, put my name on it, that kind of thing, something like that, Anyway, you can be wrong, but admit when you're wrong. Don't dig in and double down, and people. That's the way to go. So other than that, but I do think I said something stupid, and with regard to they should be given a pick.
Dan?
In general, there's just stuff, just too harsh on some guys. I think Oil Can. I think Pedro to a degree. I didn't enjoy Pedro as much as I should have, like how great he was, because I was a little caught up in the diva stuff and the special treatment. Well, yeah, he's so great. He kind of he deserves it, I suppose. But I think just not seeing how the wonderfulness and those '80s Celtics and being a little too harsh. And it's funny Bob referenced Reggie Lewis because July 27th, 1993, when Reggie dropped dead at Brandeis. There had been a lot leading up to that, as we all know, and I was adamant about the Dream Team and sticking with what they knew. And when he went out and found Gilbert Mudge and this, I thought I didn't like Dave Gavitt embracing this because they knew what the Dream Team had told them. And I thought this was litigious, and now they're out from under it, and they can blame the doctor, and they welcomed him back to basketball, and I didn't like it at the time. And then when Reggie dropped dead, I just went off. I wrote a very angry column that ran on page 1, and it was just too soon. It's like I've always compared it to when the young divorcee leaves her kids at home and goes out on a date and the house burns down. That's not the day to write, it's her fault that the children are dead.
Right.
It's too soon, even though it's true. But in this case, I was really harsh toward Gavitt and the Celtics for allowing him to think he was coming back. And just leading up to that, I just thought it was unnecessary death and it was horrible. And I thought the litigiousness got in the way of that.
That was a tough one. I mean, for everybody, because I think
it wasn't a good day. There was not one good day ever in that story. From the moment he dropped in the Charlotte game, right up to the funeral, everything was bad.
It was
that night, Dan, the game starts. I'm sitting behind the basket then, and the game starts. And in the first period, he was running around like a crazy man, and that's usually not what he does. You remember, he was just smooth and effortless and glide. He was a glider. He wasn't a frenetic player. He was out of sorts in that first period. Okay, so finally it happens that the ball goes up, and there's a rebound, and the 9 guys are riding to the other end of the court, and who's sitting about 10 feet in front of me on the floor with a look on his face that says, "What is happening to me?" And that was Reggie Lewis, and that's how it happened. I'll never forget that.
Bob's right. Pre-game, it was Charlotte, right?
Yes.
And they had Wingate, and they had 2 of the high school, the Dunbar boys,
Bugsy.
Yes. So I remember going to both rooms to talk to these guys who had played together in high school. It was interesting. He had 3 teammates, all in the playoffs. Fast forward, 3 high school teammates. What are the odds of that? And I remember Reggie was I had never seen him more amped up. He was bouncing on his heels. I mean, you'd say Red Bull or something, but whatever. Wasn't natural. And go look at the video. There's balls where he'll fire up in the right corner, he'll rebound the left corner. I mean, he was a pinball out there. It was very unusual.
Yeah. So
I know for me, Dan, I got in this business because Bob knows I also love acting, and I got in this business to be on TV or radio and talk about sports. I was not going to be a coach. I was going to do something in the electronic media. You guys got in this business to cover sports. And one of the things I thought I was going to try to be the next Bob Lobel, where I just read highlights and everybody's happy and you say something snappy to Liz Walker and everybody loves you and you go home. I never adjusted to the part of the job of covering something like Reggie Lewis, or where sports radio has really gone over the top in being critical. But in that situation, Dan, talk about how you didn't get in the business to cover stories like that.
Well, and a lot of it we're ill-equipped for it. But for me, labor was always the worst for that. I walked in to cover the Orioles, and then there's the baseball strike of '81, and all this stuff with Marvin Miller and Donald Fear and Ken Moffitt and NLRB, and you're out of your depth. I mean, you don't ask the food writers to cover Vietnam War.
Right.
And so I didn't like contracts. I still don't know what the second apron is. I don't want to know. No, I did not get into this for money, labor, crime, death,
Right.
Those things. So yeah, we're out of our depth in a lot of that stuff. No question.
So I totally and 100% agree. We're the same person in that regard. And as we were speaking, Dan, I'm thinking about there was one guy of our acquaintance who loved that. It was like, oh God, they're going to play a game. Well, I have to waste my time at the game. Murray Chess at the New York Times. He lived for that stuff.
Right.
That was his expertise. Oh no, they're going to play. Oh well, all right, get it over with. Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I didn't get in for that. I got into the business to write. That's the whole thing. Writing. I love words. I love writing. I like rearranging words. I like reading, and that's what I wanted to do. And the sports and I love sports, but they're married. I always said it when I speak. It's a 2-part word. Sports and writing is a 2-part word. And the first part's the easy part. You just live your life. You're a sports fan. You play. You grow up. You're a kid. You learn sports. You play sports. It's inherent. It's natural, and it's always there. When there's millions of people that can talk sports, but not that many can write sports and put it in and do it and make it readable and literate and
do it quickly and do it quickly
and do it in 45 minutes. That's right. And if you're lucky, an hour after a game. So that's why I got in. And I found, fortunately, lucked into the right place to do it.
One of the reasons I thought the Globe writers were so good, specifically you two, was I could read it, not know the byline, and know who wrote it. Like when you read a Bob Ryan column, Dan, I can hear him. And this is before I knew him. I could hear him.
When you read, this is inarguable. That's probably Ryan.
That's Bob Ryan. Oh yeah. And then when I'm reading a Dan Shaughnessy column, Bob, I don't. It's not so much I hear Dan, but I feel him. Because Dan is not really a loud guy, but I kind of feel him. I feel his presence. So, Bob, I want you to describe Dan's writing style, and then I'll ask Dan to describe Bob's writing style. Bob, go ahead.
Well, it's a good question. I think he's just a facile, which is a smooth, knowledgeable person, and it's built on knowledge. It's built on expertise as well, and knowing what you're talking about. And also, I think he thinks, and I like to think of myself the same way. I think he thinks like a fan. Like his reaction to the current Red Sox is I think the way a caring fan would, he thinks that they're going on the wrong path, and is resentful of that, and who are they trying to tell us? Why are they acting like a small market team or a mid-market team when we know damn right well they have the resources? And why is this different than it used to be? And I think that's a fair question. Asking the questions or postulating the theories of I think of what a fan could do. I like to think I do that. And I think that's part of it, and just the fact that he's a good purveyor of prose. He writes beautiful sentences, and so he's a fun read.
Dan, on Bob.
It's easy. I mean, Ryan brings you passion, encyclopedia knowledge of sports, and delivers it in a very clean literary style. He was taught. It's almost as if he was Jesuit trained. He knows how to put it together, and that goes to BC, it goes to Lawrenceville, it goes to the Ryan household, and we're all better for having that in front of us.
I think
the Mercy Nuns started with the Mercy Nuns at St. Joseph's School, who were sticklers on grammar. They were sticklers on grammar. I can still see Sister Mary Sebastian diagramming the sentence.
Oh yeah.
We were brought up diagramming sentences, and that's my foundation. Started right there, so that when I took an entrance exam for Lawrenceville, I aced the English easy. That was the easy part.
Dan, you don't know this, but my son Van played a lacrosse game at Lawrenceville, and I was looking for the Bob Ryan building. That place is a factory.
Bob, did you see my Jim Waugh paragraph last week?
I did, and I loved it, and absolutely. And it just so happens, over the weekend I was in North Carolina, and the subject of Seth, his son, came up. He just resigned as the PGA head. Anyway, I love that, and I love the idea, the poker playing with Bill Shaughnessy, and
Unbelievable.
You never told me about the curveballs before, though.
yeah. Well, I did a little dive on him, but Gary, just to quickly, will not bore your listeners, but there was one man who connects Ryan, Gammons, and Shaughnessy in this instance, and it is Jim Waugh. His son Seth Waugh ran the PGA for the last 6 years. He used to have that Tiger Woods golf thing in Norton. Big rich guy, Deutsche Bank, all this stuff, very successful. And the old man was Jim Waugh, who somehow had a life and a career where he taught Peter Gammons at Groton School, taught Bob Ryan at Lawrenceville, and played cards at the VFW hall with my old man in Groton. Same guy.
That's amazing.
He was a publishing poet and a loved the sport. He was my assistant basketball coach, and he was the head baseball coach after I left. And they named the baseball field after him right now. When you went to Lawrenceville, you would have gone to the Jim Waugh Field had you gone to a baseball game. And indeed, Seth is his son, but a fascinating guy. Oh my God!
And he would have also coached and taught Huey Lewis and Armand Hill, correct?
Yes. In fact, he would. Yeah, absolutely. He coached. Yeah, Huey Lewis was his real name, Hugh Craig, by the way, folks, Cregg. He was a right-hand pitcher for Lawrenceville, class of '67.
Unbelievable. There's the encyclopedia again. Okay, I want to talk about your styles. Like when I read Bob, and you could tell that he holds people accountable, but he's still a fan. With Dan, I want to know where this came from, because when I tell people that Dan Shaughnessy is like the nicest, calmest, one of the most cerebral people I ever met. Like if you talk to Dan, it's like really chill. But there's something in you, and I wonder where it came from. I don't know if it's coming from a small town. I don't know if it's something in your family, but when you see an injustice, you have a calling. Where did that come from?
Yeah. Bob and I have been around the bend on this. This is where there's a little bit of a fork in the road here.
Right. Oh, I agree. But what makes you different is what makes you great.
So, and we do come to it as fans generally, but I've been able to separate, like Bob's a season ticket holder, and he invests his money in this, and his wife likes the games, and it's been a great thing in his life. And I love sports. I love the competition. I love the playoffs. I love all that stuff. But yeah, I've somehow been able to step back and just be, that whole thing about rooting for yourself and being not tied up in whether the local team wins or loses. I know it's good for us if they're winning. I know that. But if things aren't going well, or if the owners or whoever, I feel we're representing the fans, and if things aren't being taken care of business, then I'm going to call attention to that in a very, in sometimes harsh way. I really disagree with what Red Sox ownership is doing right now. I think and I can't support this winning that they're doing. They're 6 games over now. Good for them. The people in uniforms, God bless them. They're doing great. But the notion that they've been abandoned by their ownership and getting no support from above, and that bottom line has become more important than being stewards of the franchise, I'm not okay with that. And I think it's not fair to the fans who are loyal and great, invest their dollars at very high levels and deserve that love. In return, I want my owners to not care about bottom line year to year. I want my owners to, Bob Kraft's a perfect example. He cares about that team and that team only, and that's what I want my owners to be. And I don't feel the Sox are getting that right now. It's interesting. This is coming up because of the Celtic thing, where they said all those things about we get paid in championships and we don't care about making money. And now they're selling at the highest time they can to get the most money. So whatever, it's always business with them. And as one who chronicles this, it's our obligation to represent the fans there. And that's what I try to do.
And don't you feel, Bob? I mean, it's good to have a variety of styles, and that's what we saw with all of the people at the Globe. And the one thing I think, Dan, I know you write once a week, Bob, and so forth, but like Dan's still writing now. Unless I'm missing something, Dan's kind of the last guy holding people accountable because the style has changed.
Yeah, no, Dan's tried and true in that regard. And I think I've always thought when I was full time that the readers benefited from the two of us and the different the tact, the different style, the different approach. That's the word I want. The different approach. The readers benefited because we definitely aren't the same in that regard, and it much to the benefit of the reader. And to
the point where we could cover the same game, and we did this a lot. We'd cover the same game. There was no duplication of effort here.
Right, but that's what you want.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's what they got, and it worked out great, and. But just in terms of myself, I've said continually, my whole thing is rooted in being a fan and love of the competition. I still like the games, and I hate it. I laugh when people say, "Well, I don't care about who wins or loses. I just write about people." Well, guess what? Writing about people is the layup drill of writing. If you can't write it, if you are supposed to be a writer, which means you've got command of the language, you've got experience, you've got compassion, you've got humor, you've got, so forth. Writing about people is a layup drill. And it's making chicken salad out of what on a crappy game in the middle of February or August or October, no matter what sport we're talking about. That's the skill, to make that interesting and to make that readable and to make that relevant. And that's the skill. And me, it's rooted in, I still love the games. I like the competition. I get involved in all kinds of competition. I watch every second of that England-Slovakia game the other day because I appreciate international soccer. I've never been to a Revolution game. I'm after 27 years now. I've never been to a game. But I love the international feel in the world. I follow the World Cup. I follow the European. That game with Slovakia and England is that's going to be one of my highlight sports events of the season, of the year, the calendar year, 2024, when it's all said and done. I'm going to remember that game and the way it ended and the bicycle kick that tied it up, the whole thing. So anyway, I like competition. The Olympics are coming up, I'm looking forward to the Olympics. I love the Olympics. I did 11 of them and 6 summer and 5 winter. So anyway, I'm still appreciate that and it's carried me and it's still carrying me.
Dan, you'll enjoy this. Ron Borges told me, I think did Borges room with you in Seoul? Or was he with you in Seoul?
No, Barcelona.
Bob's heard the story. Borges said to Bob, this Dream Team basketball, I don't know what the big deal is. He said, Bob went on for a week. Borges said, Bob just took off and won for a week. It's what makes him great. Okay, now, as we get close to wrapping things up here, at times I felt this. I haven't handled it well. I don't like it. And it may have been a detriment to me, the way the business has gone, but I'm okay with that. Because I think the sports talk hosts of the world right now can handle it better than I could. There are times you're on an island. Dan, there are times that, everybody thinks your life is great. And believe me, it has been. But you got a player mad at you. Then you leave the building and you got somebody say, Shaughnessy, you suck. How did you deal with that? Because sometimes in the media, you're on an island. You're kind of the lost boy, if you will.
To be true to their own selves and your convictions. And I'm not trying to be provocative or contrived or get clicks or whatever, but it's rooted in how I feel at that time. And it's also only sports. It's not. This is not like writing about the real sensitive things. Bob and I get together every week in this group, and we do not talk about politics because it just doesn't serve any purpose. But we can have fun arguing about sports. The whole Mathis or Sinatra thing. That's all we're doing here, and that's sports. And so, you like Manny, I don't like Manny, whatever. It's like it doesn't mean we can't have a beer and talk about it and have fun. So I just can't get caught up in that kind of emotion about, disliking or being personal to the other commentators because we have a disagreement about how we approach this. So just try and keep it there. I mean, yeah, you get heated and like this. Nobody likes to be told you suck all day. Sometimes, you're reading the comments of your inbox and it's like, boy, I really suck. It's like, just had 6 hours of reading this stuff. Not fun. But ultimately, we are blessed to have the jobs we have. We get to go to Star Market and load up the cart because we talk and write about sports. And that's right. God bless America and God bless Boston and the Boston Globe in our case. And I'm very grateful for that. So at the end of the day, it's entertainment, it's sports. And I think we should be able to disagree and not get personal about it.
Bob?
Well, I really have been blessed. I think I don't have too many examples of real bad vitriol about that, that I can tell it at all. And, now it doesn't mean I didn't take any stands, but Dan's right. It's you're picking, you're settling arguments that are, I'll paraphrase the great late Robert B. Parker about baseball. He said, baseball is the most important thing in life that doesn't matter. And you can extrapolate that for us, following sports is the most important thing in life that doesn't matter. In that sense, obviously we know that the lives are at stake and livelihoods and so forth. But think about how I've gotten on this shtick for guys for the last several years about why sports is not entertainment. It's different. Entertainment is scripted for the most part. Sports is spontaneous for the most part.
Right. Unscripted.
And it's the great unknown that makes it fun and anticipation and moments in games, 3-2 pitch, ninth inning, bases loaded, clock running down for fourth and goal. Gee, should we give the ball to beast mode or not? That kind of stuff. Is Larry going to make the 3-pointer? But ultimately, doesn't matter. So why get upset about it? I had one this week. My last column, I tried to slot the newly minted NBA champions into the hierarchy of Celtic championships. There's 18 of them now. Where they rate, and I made a judgment right away. I got to identify that there were 5 separate groups that won going back to 1957, and I want to get them all involved. So So right away, I'm only going to pick one from the 60s, one from the 70s, one from the 80s, plus the last 2, which are distinct in their composition. The 08 and this one. And you're not going to please all people, but a couple of people got all upset because of Russell. Didn't get. And what about 69? You know what? They're right. I probably should have done 69 instead of 65, which would have been a better team. But 69 was a romanticism about they weren't supposed to win. It was Russell's farewell. Blah blah blah. In retrospect, yeah, I tell people that write me about that. But if that's as heated as it gets about sports, it's just about sport. That's pretty good. And for the most part, I don't get involved with people in that passionate way about where it's really serious stuff. It's about this fun stuff.
Okay, as we wrap things up, guys, I want to ask you just to give me your feelings on the 2 teams that you're associated with. Bob, you are, even though you were a baseball fan, you told me first, but you are the commissioner of the NBA. I mean, that's just the way it is. So I'm going to ask you to give me your thoughts on your relationship with the Celtics as a whole, and then I'm going to ask Dan about the Sox. So let's start with you.
My so-called career is built, and I am grateful to on Boston Celtics and the NBA, and the fact that I was handed this team as the NBA was going to turn upward and eventually went from a mom and pop store, which had 14 teams when I started, and there's 32 now, and has an international presence that didn't exist. And I mean, I've ridden that wave. And my identity, I know my identity is with basketball, and I'm proud of it. Okay, and I owe it to the Celtics for being you need a vehicle, Dan. There's great writers out there that people don't know about that don't have the vehicles that we have had. The Boston sports machine, and the Celtics in particular for both of us, and at times. So yeah, absolutely. I'm very grateful. I'm very proprietary toward the NBA. I don't mean I like it as much as I used to because the 3-point shot has ruined the game of basketball. Well, we can have that discussion some other day. But it's altered the game of basketball. No one can deny that. Whether you like it or not, it's altered it, okay? And I happen to not to like it. But anyway, I still like it's still the best basketball in the world, the NBA, and I care about it. But I'm totally grateful to what the Celtics have done to advance my so-called career. Absolutely, it was built on the NBA. There's no doubt about it.
Dan with the Red Sox.
Right. Baseball's been very good to me, and that's truth, always true, and very grateful for having this narrative to track. And so growing up with it when the team wasn't very good here in the 60s, but I was immersed in it. I knew so much then when I was young, way more than now, in terms of who's on what team and this and that. And then having the privilege to be around that team and cover them every day and be there for 86, be there for 78, be there for 75, be there for 86. And then I started writing books, and I wrote The Curse of the Bambino in the late 80s, and it became kind of a monster of its own.
Oh, it is a monster of its own.
Yeah, the title was so good, and it was co-opted by everybody. The Red Sox appropriated the title as part of their mission statement with the new owners in 2002. And then that 2004 Red Sox is still the greatest sports story ever told, and we were right there at the epicenter. And it's a biblical narrative, unlike anything else. Nothing will ever be the same, and nothing has been the same since then. But we were there every day for it. So that was a great honor and privilege for me, and I feel very blessed to have been around it. And it was good for business, as Bob said. It made people want to sign you to book contracts and write books and go on TV and comment about it because we were there. I was there for every day of it.
Do you remember specifically what you were thinking walking out of the ballpark on Saturday night after 19-8?
Like everybody else, and I wrote it. I said, it's on the front page of the Globe. We have, the Red Sox are not going to win the World Series for the 87th consecutive autumn. That has never been corrected by the ever vigilant Boston Globe front page desk. They need to correct that statement. It was printed, and it was not true. They did win, and I said they were not going to. So yeah,
I remember specifically thinking. You remember the big narrative was they wanted to play the Yankees. Fans wanted to play the Yankees, right?
Yeah.
I said, you wanted to play the Yankees? You happy now?
Yeah,
that was my thought. You happy now?
I've had that whole dust up with Millar where we're talking about he's yelling at me for calling them frauds, and I said, well, if you do lose this like this, you are frauds, and it was true then, it's true now, and now it's some rallying cry. And I never got my World Series share, but I'm starting to think I should get credit for that if Kev's going to keep pushing it. That's what triggered the comeback, because they won 8 straight games after 19-8 in Game 3. They were a freaking wagon, and just could have winning into the. It was amazing.
We went from 19-8 to 11 nights later sipping the champagne.
What a story.
And no one's ever done that. 8 straight games in LCS and the World Series. They ran the table after 19-8. And Tito, I did the book with Tito too, and he said, in those days they had the media he had to get in a golf cart from the dugout around center field to the left field corner where the door is. That's how they got him to the room, so he didn't have to go walk through the underbelly. And he said that golf cart ride, people are throwing shit at me and everything. It was bad. No one thought they were going to win at that point, to the point where, high school Sam Shaughnessy gave up his ticket to Game 4, did not even go Sunday night. Did not want to see the Yankees celebrating on the Fenway lawn. So that was real. It was real, and it's still forever the greatest story ever told in sports.
Yeah, and Tito, you got to, if you haven't read Dan's book with Francona, it's tremendous. And I think, Dan, the funny story you told me is when you jumped in the car didn't Terry pull up to your driveway and you jumped in the car with him and he said, it's a good thing my windows are tinted?
Well, he met my wife, who's not a sports fan. I introduced her to the ex-manager of the Red Sox. He said, nice to meet you. And my first stop's going to be to get my windows tinted so people don't see me driving him around. Because that was the... when my agent, who's very good, suggested that book the day Tito was fired, and my agent had brokered the Joe Torre Yankee years with Tom Verducci. He said, you could do that same book for the Red Sox and Tito. And I said, yeah, but he hates me. Well, send him an email anyway. So I sent him an email. Tito, sorry you got fired. You want to do a book? No, and not with you.
It's a great book. Oh my God, it's such a great book. Gentlemen, it has been an honor. I don't want to make this sound like a eulogy, but it's you guys are great. I love you both. This has been tremendous. Thank you for doing this. It's going to be a 2-part series on CLNS Media, and just good health. And I'll talk to you again next week, Bob. Dan, if you need anything, let me know. Bob Ryan, Dan Shaughnessy, Hall of Famers. A look back at their life at the Globe and in sports. Brought to you by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of CLNS Media Network. Pick more, pick less with Prize Picks.